My daughter Emily had married a young millionaire, or at least that's what everyone believed. People kept telling me how lucky she was, how perfect they seemed together, how a man like that only comes around once in a lifetime. They didn't know the truth yet. Neither did I. At their wedding, during our father-daughter dance, Emily leaned in close, her smile frozen for the cameras. She slipped a small envelope into the inside pocket of my suit jacket, the motion so smooth I almost didn't feel it. Her whisper trembled against my ear. "Dad, please help me." 5 words, enough to chill me to the bone, but that moment wouldn't make sense until much later, to understand how we reached it. You need to go back 6 months back to the first night Tyler Morgan walked into my home. The fork paused halfway to Tyler's mouth as he stared at the far corner of my living room, where my old mahogany desk sat beneath a framed print. His eyes weren't looking at the print, though. They were looking at the papers I'd left on the desk, casual, unimportant, a decoy. "You know, Ed," he said suddenly, lowering his fork with exaggerated precision, "your retirement savings shouldn't just sit in some basic bank account earning, 0.5% with my fintech connections. I could triple your returns in 6 months." My daughter sat beside him at the dining table, fingers tightening around her water glass. "Tyler," she murmured, cautious. I smiled the way I had learned to smile during 40 years of authenticating modern art, dealing with overconfident collectors, over-eager buyers, and, yes, more than a few con men. "That's kind of you," I said. "But at my age, I prefer boring and safe." He laughed too loud from my modest Richmond District dining room. "That's exactly the problem with your generation. Ed, money should work for you." The first time Tyler visited, he arrived in a white Tesla he parked diagonally across my driveway, as if he wanted the entire street to see it. His handshake was enthusiastic in the way of someone running for office, and his watch a designer brand. No scratches glinted each time he moved his hand. While Emily made coffee, he wandered around my home like an appraiser at an estate sale, taking mental inventory of everything: the furniture, the fixtures, the square footage. What he didn't examine closely were the unassuming stamp albums on my shelf albums containing a collection worth $8 million. To him, they were just old man clutter, Emily whispered excitedly in the kitchen. "He has an office downtown in the financial district. Dad, he's doing really well." I nodded but couldn't help noticing how his tailored suit didn't yet have the natural creases and wear marks of someone who had truly earned it. 2 weeks before the wedding, Tyler leaned back in my dining chair like he already owned the place. "I'm serious. Ed, you could make real money. What do you charge for consulting these days?" $50 an hour? Emily flushed with embarrassment. "Tyler, I'm just saying." He insisted. "Your dad deserves better returns after working hard all his life." I gathered plates from the table, deliberately calm. Anyone want more wine when he excused himself to the bathroom? I watched his reflection in the darkened window as he stopped at my desk, angling his phone to photograph the deliberately unimpressive bank statements I'd left there. What he didn't notice was the locked cabinet above where the truly valuable documents were stored. While Emily helped me in the kitchen, Tyler's voice drifted through the cracked door. He was on speakerphone. $85,000 for a wedding," he said. "The old man's loaded," a woman's voice answered Vanessa, his sister. "Emily's the key. Just be patient." "I know," Tyler said, lowering his voice but not enough. "She trusts me completely." That was the moment the ground beneath my feet shifted. Yes, I had paid $85,000 for their wedding at Meadowood Napa Valley Resort, but only because Emily's happiness had always been my priority. And yes, I kept my real life quiet. The truth was, I had built a fortune as JS, a name known only in the elite corners of the art world. Tyler had no idea who he was dealing with. That night, after Emily left with him, I opened my stamp album. The penny black worth $180,000 gleamed under the magnifying glass. It represented decades of patience, precision, and the ability to spot a fake from across the room. Tyler Morgan was a fake, not even a skilled one. I called my friend and attorney, Catherine Kate Ramirez. "Kate, I need you to start listening for information about someone." "Who?" "Tyler Morgan. Claims to be a fintech entrepreneur with an office downtown." Kate was silent for a moment, then her tone shifted. "I'll start tonight." I hung up and rested my hand on the stamp album. Tyler thought he was hunting an old man with modest savings. He had no idea he had walked straight into the home of a lion who had simply chosen to live quietly. And the wedding was only 2 weeks away. The stage was set. The game had begun. The Meadowood Napa Valley Resort looked like something out of an elegant magazine spread sunlight slipping through oak branches, vineyards rolling toward the hills, guests dressed in pastel colors and polished shoes. It should have been a perfect day. For everyone else, it probably was. For me, something felt wrong, a quiet wrongness settling deep in my chest. I watched Emily, radiant in her wedding dress, step onto the dance floor as the band began the father-daughter song. Her smile was flawless, the kind meant for photographers and relatives. But her hands trembled when she placed them on my shoulders. "Dad," she whispered, her lips barely moving. "Read it when you're alone. Please." That envelope she had slipped into my pocket during the dance felt suddenly heavier than it should. The weight of a secret, the weight of fear. We finished the dance. She kissed my cheek for the cameras, and the room erupted in applause. No one saw the panic hiding behind her eyes, except me. I walked off the dance floor with steady, practiced steps, smiled at passing guests, nodded at compliments, then slipped quietly toward the restroom. My pulse hammered against my ribs. Inside, I locked the door, exhaled shaky air, and pulled out the envelope. The hotel stationery smelled faintly of lavender. Emily's handwriting, normally steady and round, shook across the page. "Dad, help me. 3 days ago, I overheard Tyler on the phone with Vanessa. He said he's marrying me for your money. He said that after the wedding, he'll convince me you need to be in a nursing home to access your accounts." "Dad, I didn't know what to do. Everyone's here. Everything is paid for. Please stop this." I read the note twice. The first time, disbelief washed over me. The second time, something inside me hardened. It was a feeling I hadn't touched in years. A steel edge forged from decades in the art world where negotiation was war. Deception ran rampant, and only the sharpest survived. I'd chosen a quieter life for Emily's sake. But quiet didn't mean weak. I folded the letter with precise movements, slid it back into my jacket, splashed cold water on my face, and looked at myself in the mirror. The man staring back wasn't the mild, easygoing retiree that Tyler assumed he was. He was J.S., the man who'd once been able to dismantle multi-million-dollar schemes with a single phone call. Tyler should have researched me better. When I stepped back into the reception hall, sound returned in waves, laughter, clinking glasses, the band's light jazz. Guests enjoyed expensive champagne I'd paid for, but the taste in my own mouth was cold metal. I found Tyler at the bar. He was surrounded by 3 friends in rented tuxedos, all of them laughing at something he'd said. He wasn't even trying to hide his arrogance. Old man's money well spent, he joked loudly. At least the booze is top shelf. His friends laughed. "Dude, you're terrible," one said. "I'm smart," Tyler corrected smugly. "There's a difference. I give it 6 months before we have full access to his accounts. Emily will sign anything I ask." I was standing 10 feet behind him. Guests around him fell silent, their laughter fading as they noticed me first. Tyler didn't. He was too drunk on his own ego. I turned toward the stage. The microphone sat waiting. I picked it up. The band stopped mid-note. Conversations died instantly. The hall fell into a silence so deep I could hear a glass set down on a table somewhere in the back. "This wedding is canceled." My voice didn't need to be loud. It only needed to be certain. Hundreds of faces turned toward me. Emily froze near the bridesmaids, tears welling. Tyler blinked in confusion. "Ed, what the hell are you? I have information," I continued. "That makes this marriage impossible." A ripple spread through the crowd. Someone gasped. "Emily," I said, turning toward her. "Come with me." Tyler stepped forward, panic rising in his voice. "Emily, wait. Your dad is confused. He doesn't understand." I looked at him. Just one cold, unblinking look. It silenced him more effectively than shouting ever could. Vanessa rushed to Tyler's side, gripping his arm. She'd realized before he had that everything was unraveling. Emily walked toward me slowly, trembling but resolute. When she reached me, I extended my hand. She took it instantly, together. We walked out. Phones came up everywhere recording, photographing, whispering. Tyler stumbled after us, yelling Emily's name, pleading, swearing he could explain. Vanessa hissed, "Stop it! Don't make it worse! It's already worse," he snapped. We didn't look back. Outside, cool air washed over us. I opened the car door for Emily, then glanced once toward the entrance. Tyler burst out of the resort, collapsing to his knees on the pavement. Vanessa tried pulling him up, her face pale with horror. Guests swarmed behind them, murmuring, filming, sharing what they'd witnessed. I got into the driver's seat. Emily cried softly beside me. I squeezed her hand. "It's going to be okay. But first, they need to understand they made a very serious mistake." We pulled away, leaving the resort and Tyler Morgan behind us. The next morning, before dawn, I woke with a clarity sharper than any I'd felt in years. Emily slept in her childhood room down the hall. I made coffee in the kitchen as the sun rose, and the plan began to take shape in my mind. Tyler tried to steal my daughter. He tried to steal my freedom. He tried to steal a life he thought belonged to a helpless old man. That would be his last mistake. I picked up my phone and texted Kate Ramirez. "Need to see you this morning. Urgent." Her reply came in less than 2 minutes. My office, 9 a.m. The pieces were already moving, and Tyler Morgan had no idea just how badly the game was stacked against him. Kate Ramirez's office overlooked Montgomery Street, 20 floors above the financial district. The morning light bounced off the glass buildings, painting the entire room in steel blue silver. I'd known Kate for almost 3 decades back when she was a junior associate fresh out of law school, and I was still living a dual life, modest, single father on the outside. Legendary art authenticator JS on the inside. She stood the moment I walked in. "Ed," she said, her tone shifting instantly when she saw my expression. "Tell me everything." I handed her Emily's note. She read it once, then again, slower. By the time she finished, her jaw had tightened, her eyes hard. "This," she said quietly, "is attempted elder financial abuse. In California, that's a felony." My hands remained steady on the table. "I need everything on Tyler Morgan and Vanessa." Kate pulled out a legal pad, already writing. "I'll start with public records, loans, civil cases, business registrations. If this goes legal, and it will, we'll put immediate protections in place for you and Emily." She stopped writing and looked up at me with an expression I hadn't seen in years. Recognition. "They picked the wrong target," she said softly. I nodded. They did. When I left the office, fog was drifting in from the bay, cooling the city. I walked to my neighbor's house. Robert Rob Chang, 70 years old, retired investigative journalist from the San Francisco Chronicle. We'd played chess every Wednesday night for 10 years. He opened the door wearing a cardigan and slippers. "Ed, you look awful." What happened? We sat in his living room surrounded by books, stacks of old newspapers, and the lingering smell of oolong tea. I told him everything, not the part about being JS, not yet, but enough for him to understand. Rob didn't interrupt once. He simply leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowed, mind working with the sharpness that had made him one of the Chronicle's most feared reporters. When I finished, he set down his tea. "Give me 3 days," he said. "If there's dirt, I'll find it." "Rob, I'm not asking you to." He waved his hand. "Some punk trying to stick my Wednesday night chess partner in a nursing home. Please. I still have contacts, court clerks, bank analysts, records people. This is what I do." I smiled for the first time that day. The next 12 days were a reminder that the universe had a sense of timing and irony. On day 4, Kate called. "Tyler has 3 outstanding business loans," she said, totaling $1.5 million, all delinquent. On day 7, Rob dropped off a printed file from a contact in Nevada. "Your boy Tyler borrowed heavily from a Vegas casino." Rob said, "800,000, defaulted. They've been looking for him." On day 9, Kate again. "IRS tax liens, 300,000, and Vanessa get this 400,000 in debt from failed real estate deals." On day 12, Rob walked into my kitchen with a manila folder so thick it could barely close. He set it gently on the table like it was a prize fish. His entire life. Rob said, "Every lie, every loan, every woman he tried this with before your Emily." We went through the documents together, the Tesla leased, the office in the financial district, a co-working desk for $500 a month, the successful startup bankrupt 14 months earlier. And then the most interesting discovery 2 years ago. Tyler had been engaged to a woman from a wealthy family in Marin County. The engagement ended abruptly. The settlement was sealed. But the pattern, unmistakable. I sat back in my chair, the dossier open in front of me. "He does this," I murmured, "over and over. He targets trusting women with well-off fathers." Rob nodded, until he hit a father who isn't what he looks like. I closed the folder. The weight of it felt symbolic. Now I knew who Tyler was, what he wanted, how he operated. The next step was destroying every part of his plan to protect Emily, and to make sure he never did this to anyone else again. That night, Emily peeked into my home office. I'd been sitting at my desk for hours, surrounded by files, legal papers, notes, and my laptop. "Dad," she asked gently, "are you okay? You've been so quiet." I closed the folder. "I'm gathering information. When you move against someone, you need to know everything." She hesitated in the doorway. What are you planning?" I looked at her, my daughter, 33 years old, a teacher, gentle-hearted, and brave enough to slip that note into my pocket during the most terrifying moment of her life. "Justice," I said simply. She swallowed hard. "Let me help. You already have. You trusted me." She leaned down and kissed the top of my head before leaving me to my work. Once she was gone, I opened an email draft addressed to someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Richard Preston, vice president at Wells Fargo. Years ago, I had helped authenticate a disputed Rothko painting for the bank's collection. He owed me a favor. I typed, "Richard, I hope you're well. Something concerning has come to my attention regarding potentially fraudulent loan documentation. Could you review the attached information discreetly?" I attached the file Rob had prepared. Then I hit send. As I set my phone down, it buzzed with a notification, a missed call. From Tyler Morgan, or more accurately, 6 missed calls, all ignored. Let him wonder, let him panic, let him feel something closing in around him, something he couldn't name yet. The trap was set. Tomorrow, the first domino would fall. 4 days into our quiet investigation, my doorbell rang at exactly 10 a.m. I checked the camera feed on my phone. Tyler Morgan stood on my front porch holding a bouquet of cheap grocery store flowers, the kind stuffed in a plastic bucket near the checkout lines. Not the boutique floral arrangements he'd brought during the early days of courting Emily. His suit wasn't tailored this time. It hung loose around his shoulders. His hair wasn't styled. His face looked tight with anxiety. I opened the door but didn't step aside to let him in. "Ed," he began, forcing a smile that cracked at the edges. "I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Whatever you heard, whatever Emily told you, we can fix this. I love her. I want to make this right." There it was, the performance. His voice softened, his eyes widened, his shoulders slumped inward. A masterclass in calculated vulnerability. But beneath the act, I could see his fingers twitching, his throat tightening, the panic he was trying to bury. "There is no misunderstanding," I said evenly, "and there is nothing to fix." His smile faltered. "Ed, please, let's talk. I know you're protective, but don't come back here again." The door clicked shut between us, through the side window. I watched him stand frozen on the porch, trying to decide whether to knock again or walk away. After a minute, he left, his shoulders pitching forward as though carrying the weight of something far heavier than his cheap flowers. The pressure was beginning to show. Good. April 15th arrived, tax day. The irony didn't escape me. Before noon, Richard Preston at Wells Fargo had already contacted all 3 institutions involved in Tyler's outstanding loans. Each discovered discrepancies, fabricated income statements, falsified tax documents, forged signatures. That same afternoon, 3 certified letters hit Tyler's mailbox, all at once. The effect, according to one of Rob's sources at a lending office, was immediate. Tyler stormed in demanding answers, insisting there must be a mistake. His voice rose until it echoed through the lobby. There were no mistakes, just consequences. That evening, a second surprise visitor appeared at my door, Vanessa Morgan. Her expression was tight, jaw clenched, eyes dark with panic. She pressed the doorbell 4 times before I finally answered, only to look her in the eyes and close the door without a word. She slipped a handwritten note into the frame before leaving. "We need to talk about Emily's future. This is between adults." I tore it in half and threw it away. The next morning, an anonymous tip crafted by Rob and delivered through one of his old contacts landed in the inbox of the business columnist at the SF Bay Observer. The article went live within 48 hours. Elder financial abuse, a growing threat in the Bay Area. It didn't mention Tyler by name, but it didn't have to. 35-year-old entrepreneur. Wedding canceled mid-ceremony, attempted guardianship scheme, restraining order pending. Anyone in Tyler's social circle knew exactly who it was about. Within days, his co-working space asked him to vacate. His scheduled investor meeting was canceled. His Tesla leasing company sent a collections notice. And the most predictable blow, every one of his automatic payments bounced. I maintained my routine walks through Golden Gate Park, chess night with Rob, dinner with Emily. I didn't have to move aggressively. Tyler and Vanessa were collapsing under the weight of their own deceptions. Rob stopped by late one evening, excitement glittering in his eyes. "Your friend Tyler is falling apart," he said. Sources from his apartment building say he's pacing his living room at midnight, shouting into his phone. Apparently he and Vanessa are calculating their debts out loud. Neighbors complained. I leaned back in my chair. Let them sweat. Desperation makes people careless. Rob chuckled. "I think their partnership is cracking." Vanessa told someone in the hallway that Tyler had ruined everything. Emily, overhearing from the kitchen doorway, stepped into the room. "Dad, do you think he'll stop, or will he try to come after you again?" She wasn't afraid for herself. She was afraid for me. That alone pierced something inside my chest. "Emily," I said softly, "a man like Tyler never stops until someone stops him. So that's what you're doing." "I'm doing what's necessary," she nodded, eyes wet but determined. "I trust you." Across town, Tyler's downward spiral accelerated. Rob's source, a maintenance worker in Tyler's building, overheard another late-night argument. 3 institutions, same day, same accusations. Vanessa's voice echoed down the hallway. "Someone orchestrated this, Tyler. Someone pulled the strings." He hissed back. "It's the old man. It has to be. But his public records show nothing. He's a nobody." His voice wavered. For the first time, doubt crept into his tone. What do we really know about him? That question hung in the air like a warning. It didn't take long for their desperation to reach its peak. In a final act of arrogance and stupidity, Tyler and Vanessa decided to sue me for emotional damages from the canceled wedding. $500,000 from Tyler, $100,000 from Vanessa. They believed I'd settle quietly to avoid embarrassment. They had no idea that by filing that lawsuit, they had just opened the door for discovery, granting Kate and me the legal right to subpoena every document, every message, every financial record they possessed. When Kate forwarded me the lawsuit, I read it once. Then I laughed a deep, unrestrained laugh Emily hadn't heard from me in years. She appeared in the doorway, startled. "Dad." "They just made the biggest mistake of their lives," I said, sliding the papers across the table. "They're taking me to court." Her face fell. "Dad, that isn't funny. It's perfect," I said. "They brought a knife to a gunfight. Emily, and they don't even know I'm armed. That night, I forwarded the lawsuit to Rob. You'll enjoy this. Then to Kate, time to show them who they're dealing with." Her reply was immediate. Finally, and just like that, our quiet war became an official one. The difference was simple. Tyler thought he was fighting an old man. I knew I was fighting a criminal. And I had only just begun. The process server arrived during breakfast 2 days later. A man in a Navy windbreaker holding a thick envelope stamped with the Superior Court of California seal. Emily froze mid-step as he confirmed my name and handed me the documents. She watched anxiously while I sliced the envelope open and unfolded the official complaint. Tyler Morgan, Edward Lawson. Emotional damages, public humiliation, breach of promise, and then, attached behind it, Vanessa Morgan vs. Edward Lawson, loss of professional reputation, wedding planning compensation. I read through the pages slowly, letting each absurd claim sink in. Emily looked pale. "Dad, what are we going to do?" I took a sip of my coffee. "We're going to have fun." She stared at me like I'd lost my mind. I drove straight to Kate Ramirez's office. She greeted me with a grin that was all teeth. "Ed," she said, "I've been waiting for this moment." We sat in the conference room overlooking the financial district. Kate spread Tyler's lawsuit across the polished table like a dealer laying out cards before a game. "This," she said, tapping the papers, "is the best gift they could have given us." "How so?" "By suing you. They handed us legal grounds to access everything. Discovery allows us to subpoena their bank records, communication history, loan documents, tax filings, and we will counter with elder financial abuse, fraud, and intentional infliction of emotional distress." "Elder abuse?" I asked. "You're 65. She said. "He planned to institutionalize you. That's felony elder abuse under California Welfare and Institutions Code 156.110.30. We're countersuing for $5 million. And trust me, $5 million is conservative." Her confidence was steady, clinical. She was a shark in a courtroom, and Tyler had just jumped into her ocean. By 3 that afternoon, we were standing in Superior Court. Tyler and Vanessa arrived with an attorney I'd never seen before, a man in a wrinkled suit rifling through his paperwork like he'd been handed the case 30 minutes prior. Tyler's eyes darted nervously around the courtroom, but Vanessa's were fixed on the judge, already calculating. The judge, a stern woman in her 50s with short gray hair, reviewed Kate's emergency filing, first Emily's handwritten note, the transcript of Tyler's conversation about placing me in a nursing home, the evidence of his debts, the pattern of previous schemes. Tyler's attorney cleared his throat. "Your Honor, my client maintains that this was a private family misunderstanding." The judge interrupted, voice cold. "This is alleged elder abuse. We take that extremely seriously in this state." She turned her attention directly to Tyler. "Mr. Morgan, according to this transcript, you discussed placing Mr. Lawson in a nursing home to obtain financial control over his assets. Do you deny that Tyler's mouth opened, closed, then opened again? It was taken out of context." The judge shook her head. "I have a recording." "What context makes this acceptable?" Tyler looked helplessly at his attorney. Silence. Kate rose. "Your Honor, we are filing a counterclaim for $5 million elder financial abuse, fraud, emotional distress, and conspiracy." The judge nodded. "Accepted. I'm also granting the temporary restraining order, effective immediately." Tyler blinked. "Our restraining order. You are not to come within 100 yards of Mr. Lawson or his daughter. No calls, no messages, no third-party contact. Violation will result in immediate arrest." Vanessa shifted in her seat, jaw tightening. The judge continued. "A preliminary hearing for the countersuit is set for May 15th. Mr. Morgan, Ms. Morgan, I strongly recommend you obtain experienced legal counsel. This is serious." And with a rap of the gavel, it was done. Tyler and Vanessa sat stunned. Their attorney sagged into his chair, rubbing his temples. As we walked out of the courtroom into the bright spring sunlight, I paused on the courthouse steps. Tyler and Vanessa emerged moments later, stopping about 100 yards away because of the order. Tyler looked lost. Vanessa looked furious. I raised my hand and gave a small, cordial wave. Tyler stared back. It was the first moment he realized he hadn't waged war against a harmless retiree. He had declared war on a man who was better connected, better prepared, and infinitely more patient. Kate laughed softly as we walked to her car. May 15th is 10 days away. They're about to sink under the weight of their debts. No bank will loan them money for an attorney. And trust me, the DA is going to want to speak with you. Rob called that evening. The courthouse filing is public now. My friends at the Chronicle are already whispering. Want me to nudge things along? Not yet, I said. Let Tyler make the next mistake. He will. Rob said, people like him always do, later that night. After Emily went to bed, I sat at my desk and opened a Victorian-era stamp worth $150,000 under my magnifying glass. The lines were crisp, the history embedded in every thread of paper. I thought about Tyler pacing his apartment, Vanessa trying to salvage their plan, the weight of financial ruin closing around them like a tightening vice. 10 days. Tyler Morgan had 10 days before everything collapsed. I had spent decades mastering patience. He had spent decades running from consequences. The clock was ticking, and I was watching every second. 3 days after the court hearing, Rob Chen's column appeared in the SF Bay Observer under a headline that rippled through the city like a warning flare: elder financial abuse, a growing threat in San Francisco. The article didn't mention Tyler or Vanessa by name, but every detail was unmistakable: a 35-year-old entrepreneur, a wedding at Meadowood abruptly canceled, a daughter unknowingly targeted, and a restraining order issued to protect an elderly parent's assets. The city talked, social circles whispered, and Tyler Morgan's world began to shrink. Within 48 hours, the article had been shared more than 700 times across local networks. Everyone who once praised Tyler's charm suddenly distanced themselves, afraid of being linked to a sinking ship. That same week, Rob came over for chess night. He moved his pawn forward with a satisfied grunt. My sources say Vanessa's real estate license is under investigation. Several clients reached out to the department after reading the article. I countered his move with a bishop. And Tyler Rob chuckled, lost his co-working space. They asked him to clear out his desk. Investors canceled meetings. A friend at Wells Fargo told me his accounts are under review. Oh, and his Tesla repossessed yesterday. He sounded almost giddy. When desperation hits, he added, people show their true selves. I nodded. He hasn't shown his true self yet, but he will. Emily joined us with a cup of tea, her face calmer than I'd seen in months. Dad, she said gently. Are we safe? I mean, he's unpredictable. You're safe, I said firmly. He can't come near you. And the more desperate he becomes, the more mistakes he'll make. Across the city, those mistakes were already unfolding. Rob's contact in Tyler's apartment building, a maintenance worker with a fondness for gossip, called him with updates nearly every night. Tyler and Vanessa are screaming at each other, the worker reported. Neighbors filed noise complaints. Financial papers spread all over the floor. Vanessa keeps shouting that they're going to jail, and Tyler keeps saying you don't know who you're dealing with. Rob laughed when he'd relayed this to me. He has no idea how ironic that is. I didn't enjoy their suffering, but I didn't pity it either. They had chosen this path. Still, there was one moment that caught my attention. Rob leaned forward, lowering his voice. Ed, yesterday the maintenance guy overheard something interesting. What they said, we picked the wrong target, and Tyler asked, what do we actually know about him? That line stayed with me, because he was right. He knew nothing, and that ignorance was about to cost him everything. As the days passed, the legal clock inched toward May 15th, the preliminary hearing date for the countersuit. Tyler and Vanessa scrambled to find an attorney willing to represent them against felony charges, financial fraud accusations, and a $5 million civil claim. They couldn't afford anyone competent. Their debts towered. Their reputations collapsed. Then, on a gray Tuesday morning, Kate emailed me, they filed a lawsuit against you today. Tyler demands $500K for emotional distress. Vanessa demands $100K, documents attached. I opened the files and read their accusations. They painted themselves as victims of a cruel, unstable old man who sabotaged their wedding out of jealousy and paranoia. It was the most absurd piece of fiction I'd seen in years. Emily found me laughing in my office. Dad, what happened? They sued me, I said, wiping a tear of amusement. Her expression twisted into panic. Dad, that's not funny. What are we going to Emily? I said gently. They just made the biggest mistake of their lives. She blinked, confused. How? Because now, I said, I get to show them who they're really dealing with. Kate responded to my forwarded documents within minutes. Finally, time to destroy them. Her words, not mine. The following morning, she filed our countersuit. $5 million. Elder abuse. Fraud. Intentional emotional harm. And she submitted a request to fast-track the restraining order hearing. Emily hovered in the doorway as I reviewed the paperwork. Dad, I don't understand why you're so calm. Calm comes with age, I said, and experience. I didn't tell her everything yet. I didn't tell her that the reason Tyler's strategy had failed wasn't luck. It was because he had underestimated not just a father, but a man who had lived most of his life in the shadows of the art world, where every negotiation was life-changing and every deception carried a price. But she would learn soon. Late that night, after Emily had gone upstairs, I sat alone with my stamp collection, silent, priceless, familiar, my world, my history. On my desk lay Tyler's lawsuit. Beside it lay Rob's article and Kate's filings. In front of me sat a tiny square of history, a penny black from 1840, valued at $150,000. I examined it under my magnifying glass, the details crisp and perfect, surviving nearly 2 centuries. Tyler's schemes wouldn't survive 10 days, and he could feel it. Rob texted me video from a neighbor Tyler pacing his apartment hallway, running his hands through his hair, muttering to himself. Vanessa walked out dragging a suitcase 2 days later. Their partnership had crumbled under pressure. Good. They had planned to destroy my family, let their own destruction begin with each other. And as May 15th approached, one thing became certain: Tyler thought the worst was behind him. He was wrong. The worst hadn't even begun. Emily and I settled into a quiet routine as the days crept toward May 15th. But underneath that routine ran a current of tension, like a low hum that never stopped. She cooked dinner with me, graded papers at the dining table, and tried to focus on her students. But the strain of what she had heard, what Tyler had planned, hung over her like a shadow that refused to lift. One evening, she sat across from me long after the dishes had been washed and put away. The house was still, the fog rolling in off the ocean, the familiar smell of eucalyptus drifting through the cracked kitchen window. Dad, she began, her voice quiet. Do you want to know exactly what I heard? The whole conversation. I set down my tea. Only if you're ready to tell me. She nodded, fingers tightening around her mug. I need to say it. I need you to understand why I froze, why I didn't run sooner. I leaned forward, waiting. It was 3 days before the wedding, she said. I was at Tyler's apartment. We were finishing the seating chart. I went to take a shower. Her breath trembled before she continued. I heard him. He didn't realize I could hear through the bathroom door. He was on speakerphone with Vanessa, her lips pressed together, trying to steady themselves. Dad, he called you an old fool, he said. Can you imagine how much more he's sitting on $85,000 for a wedding? That's nothing. I didn't move. He told Vanessa he'd convinced me that you needed a nursing home, that you'd become forgetful, that I needed to take over your finances. He laughed about it. Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. He said, Emily loves me. She'll sign anything I put in front of her. A tear slid down her cheek. I stood, moved around the table, and kneeling beside her, wrapped my arms around her. She sobbed quietly into my shoulder. I felt sick. Dad, she whispered. I stood under freezing water for 10 minutes, trying not to throw up. I didn't know what to do. Everyone was already flying in. Everything was paid for. I thought if I confronted him, he'd just manipulate me again. And I couldn't ruin the wedding for you. Emily, I murmured, you saved us both. She pulled back, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her sweater. That note I gave you, I wrote it 12 times. I burned some of them. I practiced slipping it to you while we danced. Her voice was a whisper. I hope no. I knew you'd fix it. You always have. I took a deep breath. Weighing the moment, she deserved to know the truth, not just about Tyler, but about me, the real me. Emily, I said gently, there's something I haven't told you, something I never thought I'd have to reveal. She frowned, watching as I stood and walked to the study, my sanctuary. She followed quietly. I opened a cabinet drawer she had never paid attention to. Inside lay authentication certificates, auction records, insurance documents neatly organized in leather binders. Dad, what is all this? For 25 years, Before I stepped back to raise you quietly, I wasn't just a consultant. I looked at her. In the art world, I'm known as JS. She blinked, confused, processing. I built one of the most valuable private collections in the Western United States. I continued. I negotiated with billionaires, museums, private collectors. I bought and authenticated modern art pieces worth millions. I lived 2 lives, one public, one private. I pointed to the framed piece above the fireplace. That's not a poster. It's an original Keith Haring, worth about $2.5 million. Her mouth fell open. I opened the stamp album's My True Hidden Empire. This collection, I said softly, is worth $8 million. She looked back and forth between the albums and me, disbelief knitting her brows. How much? How much are you worth? Everything together, I asked. Somewhere over $50 million. She sat down slowly, almost collapsing into the leather chair. $50 million, she whispered. Dad, why didn't you ever tell me? Because, I said, taking a seat across from her, I wanted you to grow up without fear, without gold-digger friends, without pressure, without being a target. But Tyler, she said softly. Yes, I answered. He made you a target anyway. Silence settled over the room. She looked at me with a new expression, still love, but layered with awe, shock, and a dawning understanding of just how deeply Tyler had miscalculated. What are you going to do? She asked finally. I closed the stamp album gently. I'm going to make sure he never does this to anyone else. I said, ever. Her eyes warmed with something fierce. How can I help document everything? I said, every call, every message, every attempt he makes to reach you, if he contacts you again, save it. She nodded. I already did. She pulled her phone from her pocket and showed me the messages, voicemails from Tyler, each more frantic than the last. Emily, you're overreacting. Your father is manipulating you. We can fix this. Please just talk to me. Emily, I need your help. Please. She'd saved them all. You're stronger than you think. I told her quietly. She hugged me not out of fear this time, but out of strength. Later that night, when the house grew quiet and Emily finally fell asleep, I sat alone in my study. Moonlight fell across my desk. Tyler's last voicemail lit my phone. Your father has no idea what he started. I smiled. He was wrong. I knew exactly what I had started, and he hadn't even seen the beginning, because tomorrow morning, when Tyler finally pushed too far, he'd realize the truth. He hadn't picked the wrong daughter. He had picked the wrong father. The next morning, the knock on my door came earlier than expected. I wasn't surprised Tyler had reached the stage where desperation overpowered reason. The stage where a man who once believed the world owed him everything finally realized the world had moved on without him. But it wasn't Tyler at the door. It was a uniformed process server holding yet another envelope, this one thicker, heavier, the edges stamped with state markings. A second lawsuit. Emily, who had been pouring coffee in the kitchen, froze when she heard the words additional filing. She came to stand beside me as I accepted the envelope. Dad, she whispered fearfully. What now? I opened it. A criminal notice. Kate had moved faster than even I anticipated. The district attorney had reviewed our evidence, Tyler's recorded conversation about the nursing home scheme, the financial documents Rob had uncovered, years of unpaid debts, forged loan applications, falsified tax statements. The DA was pressing charges, tax fraud, loan fraud, attempted elder financial abuse, and they wanted me to testify. I felt Emily watching my face carefully. What does that mean? It means, I said quietly, Tyler's about to face something far more serious than a canceled wedding. That afternoon, Kate called. Her voice was crisp, energized. Ed, the DA's office wants you on the stand during the preliminary hearing in July. You'll need to establish your actual financial status. Tyler's attorney is already trying to argue you exaggerated the threat to Emily. Emily sat on the sofa beside me, listening intently, so I'll tell them the truth. I said. Kate exhaled slowly. That means revealing who you are. JS, the collection, the assets, everything. I glanced at Emily. She nodded once steady, courageous. I'm ready. Kate paused. It will make news. Your identity will be public. Good, I replied. Maybe it'll stop the next Tyler Morgan before he starts. When the call ended, Emily leaned into me, resting her head against my shoulder. Dad, I'm proud of you. I didn't say it out loud, but her courage was the fuel behind every step I took. 2 days later, a letter arrived. It wasn't addressed to me, it was addressed to Emily, but she brought it into my study, hands trembling, asking me to read it first. It's from Tyler, she whispered. I took the envelope cautiously. He wasn't supposed to contact us. Kate's restraining order made that clear. He must have gotten someone else to send it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten, something Tyler rarely did, which told me he'd drafted this in a moment of real desperation. Emily, I know your father poisoned you against me. He's not who he seems. I've heard things, rumors about money, about art, about secrets he's hiding. Meet me so I can explain my side. Tyler. Emily recoiled when she read it. Rumors about you, Dad. What does he know? He knows nothing. I said, he's grasping in the dark, and that makes him dangerous. She hesitated. Should I meet him? Every instinct in me said no. But logic and experience whispered something else. He won't stop until he gets closure. I said, and you need closure too, but we do it on our terms. What does that mean? A public place. Broad daylight, and I'll be close by. She nodded slowly. Okay, when Saturday. Blue Bottle Coffee on Hayes Street. Then I made 2 calls. First to Rob, I need you at the cafe. I told him, bring recording equipment. Discreet, you got it. He said, if he slips up, we'll have it. Second, to Kate, if Emily meets him, does it violate the restraining order? Kate said, restraining orders protect you from him. If Emily initiates contact, it's legal, but if he threatens her or mentions you in any way that implies intent, we can use that. Perfect. Saturday arrived, cold and bright, the kind of morning where sunlight feels sharpened by fog. Emily dressed simply, jeans, sweater, hair tied back. She took a deep breath before stepping out of the car. You ready? I asked. She nodded, from across the street, through the windshield. I watched her walk into the cafe. Rob sat inside with a newspaper, his recording device hidden behind a folded page. Tyler was already there. He stood when she approached, eyes red, face unshaven, wearing the same wrinkled shirt he'd worn 3 days in a row. When he reached for her hand, she kept hers by her side. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read the body language. He was pleading. She was listening, but guarded. Rob later gave me the full transcript, but in that moment, watching through the cafe window, I saw the exact moment Tyler made his fatal mistake. He leaned forward. His expression shifted from remorseful to calculating, and he said something that made Emily stiffen, her shoulders tightening like she'd been struck. She stood abruptly. She placed her coffee cup at the edge of the table, our prearranged signal. I was out of the car before she reached the door. She walked toward me with purpose, not panic. Her chin lifted, her eyes steady. In the car, she finally spoke. You were right, she said, voice quiet but clear. He didn't want me. He wanted your money. Even now. I stayed silent, letting her continue. He said he'd heard rumors, that you were richer than you pretended. He asked me to talk to you, to convince you to help him. She swallowed. It wasn't an apology. Dad, it was another attempt. His last one. I took her hand gently. I'm sorry you had to see that, but I'm glad you did. Her eyes softened. I needed to. Otherwise, I might have always wondered if he'd changed. Rob called as we pulled into the driveway. Got everything, he said. Audio is clear. He violated the spirit of the restraining order. He also admitted he'd been digging into your background. Careless move. Send it all to Kate, I replied. Emily sat back in her seat, breathing steadily. So what now? Now, I said, we look forward, because Tyler Morgan had taken his last shot, and he had missed. After Emily confronted Tyler in that cafe, something inside her finally shifted, not broken, released. The kind of release that comes only after truth hits hard enough to clear out every last excuse a person has been holding on to. For the first time in months, she slept through the night. Tyler, on the other hand, spiraled, and the spiral came fast. Rob called the next morning. Ed, you'll like this one. Tyler's been evicted from his co-working space permanently. They said the article in the Observer scared off too many members, and one of their board advisors knows Kate, so let's just say the door closed quick. Good, I said. Oh, and another thing. Someone in his building saw him arguing with Vanessa over the phone. Looks like she's cooperating with investigators. She told him, and I quote, "I'm not going down for your stupidity." Vanessa Morgan had finally begun to panic. Good. She had every reason to. Later that afternoon, Kate called. Ed. The DA reviewed the recording from the cafe. Tyler's statements confirm intent. They're moving forward with charges. The preliminary hearing will be in July. They will absolutely want your testimony. I'm ready. I said, "You understand this means laying everything bare? Your identity, your assets, the collection?" Yes. Kate sighed, not out of concern, but out of respect. Most people would hide behind lawyers or settle quietly. You're doing the opposite. People need to understand that age isn't a weakness, I said. And neither is silence. She paused. Emily is lucky to have you. I'm the lucky one. 2 weeks later. The next blow struck this time at Tyler's finances. Rob arrived at my house with a wide grin and an envelope under his arm. "You'll enjoy this," he said, handing me a printout. "What am I looking at? Chapter 7, Bankruptcy Filings," Rob said triumphantly. "Tyler filed yesterday. Vanessa filed separately this morning. The financial wolves finally caught up." I skimmed the documents. 2.3 million in outstanding debts, 0 assets of value, and a long list of creditors demanding answers. "Rob," I said, "you've outdone yourself." He grinned. "Oh, we're not done. I have another gift." He handed me a second printout, a transcript of an overheard argument in Tyler's building. He told Vanessa, Rob said slowly, that he regrets not going after a bigger fish. Apparently he still doesn't understand who you are. Emily, who had been walking into the room, froze. "Dad, what does that mean?" "It means Tyler still thinks he missed a bigger opportunity than us," I said quietly. "He doesn't understand he never had one." Emily sank into a chair. "I can't believe he's still talking like that. People like Tyler don't change," I said. "They just run out of places to hide." Rob chuckled darkly. "Speaking of which, Vanessa moved out, took her suitcase and left him to drown. Sources say she plans to throw him under the bus in her cooperation with the DA. Emily exhaled slowly. Good. But she looked tired, not from fear, but from having witnessed too much ugliness in such a short time. I reached for her hand. "This ends soon, sweetheart." A week later, I received 2 letters, one from Michael's correctional facility, one from a small apartment complex in the East Bay. They sat unopened on my desk for days until finally, Emily walked into the study, looked at the letters, then back at me. "You're allowed to read them," she said softly. "Am I asked. She nodded. "You don't owe them anything, but if you don't read them now, you'll wonder later. And wondering gives them power." She was right. So I started with Tyler's letter. It was handwritten, careful penmanship. A far cry from the arrogant messages he used to send. "Mr. Lawson, I'm writing from a place I never imagined I'd be. I've had time to think. Time is all you have here. I want to say that I'm sorry. Not for me, for Emily. She didn't deserve any of this. You stopped me, and you were right to do it. I hope she finds someone who appreciates who she is. I was never that person. It wasn't absolution, but it was acknowledgement. I set it aside and opened Vanessa's letter next. Mr. Lawson. I have lost everything: my license, my career, my savings, my reputation. I wake up every morning knowing I created this. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to thank you for not destroying me completely when you could have. I will try to rebuild my life honestly this time." There was no warmth in her words, but there was honesty. Emily read both letters quietly, then asked, "Are you going to respond?" "Yes." She looked surprised. "Why? Because letting go is not the same as forgiving," I said. "And forgiveness is not the same as forgetting." So I wrote 2 simple replies. To Tyler, "Your apology is acknowledged. Use this time wisely. The door to my life and Emily's is closed, but your life is still ahead of you. Choose better from here. To Vanessa, your apology is acknowledged. Rebuild your life honestly. Stay away from my family, but know that I do not wish you additional suffering. Emily read the responses and nodded. That's merciful. Mercy, I said, is something people have to earn. They haven't earned forgiveness, but they've earned closure. She leaned against my shoulder. Dad, thank you. For what? For handling all of this without becoming like them. I kissed the top of her head. I had every advantage they didn't know about. I said gently, that's the difference. Outside the window, the fog lifted, revealing the city. Light hit the edges of the Golden Gate Bridge. A new day, a new phase. Tyler and Vanessa had finally fallen silent. But our story, it wasn't done yet, because the world was about to learn exactly who JS truly was. The bankruptcy hearing came sooner than expected. Routine, predictable, procedural. That's what Tyler must have told himself. But nothing about that day would be routine for him. He sat at the defendant's table looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. Unshaven, shoulders slumped, hands clasped tightly as if holding himself together. Papers lay spread before him listing his debts, $2.3 million he would never pay back. Across the room, reporters filled the benches, drawn by Rob's article and the whispers of a fallen fintech prodigy. And then Tyler saw me, his face drained of color. He lurched to his feet, voice cracking with bitterness loud enough to echo through the courtroom. This is his fault. That old man destroyed my life. He sabotaged my wedding, turned my fiancée against me, called my creditors. He ruined everything because he couldn't stand losing control of her. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. The judge, a stern woman with steel gray hair tied in a knot, slammed her gavel once. Order! Kate rose before the judge could even ask, her tone razor-sharp. Your Honor, given Mr. Morgan's accusations, perhaps Mr. Lawson should be allowed to clarify his circumstances. The judge turned her gaze to me. Mr. Lawson, would you approach the stand? I rose slowly, deliberately. Emily sat behind me with her hands clasped tightly in her lap, a quiet, steady presence. The bailiff swore me in, and I took my seat. The judge folded her hands. Mr. Lawson, please explain your relationship to this case. I nodded. I'm Edward Lawson, 65 years old. I live quietly in the Richmond district for the past 15 years. I kept a low profile for my daughter's sake. Tyler scoffed loudly. You're a nobody. I turned to him, not angry, not shaken, just calm. No, Mr. Morgan, I said, I'm someone you failed to research properly. I paused, letting the silence settle. In the art world, I continued. I am known as JS. A ripple went through the courtroom, small gasps, the rustle of papers, reporters leaning forward. For 25 years, I worked as a private dealer and collector of modern and contemporary art. I acquired pieces from Basquiat, Keith Haring, early Banksy prints, among others. I built one of the most valuable private collections on the West Coast. Tyler's eyes widened, confusion flickering into shock. My collection is valued at over $50 million. I said, I lived modestly by choice. Kate stepped forward, handing the judge a binder, authentication certificates, insurance policies, auction records, Your Honor. The judge scanned the documents with raised eyebrows. I went on, Mr. Morgan believed I had perhaps $400,000 in retirement savings. He planned to manipulate my daughter into placing me in a nursing home and granting him financial guardianship. That was his strategy. I turned my gaze to him fully. You aimed for what you thought was a small target. Tyler. But you didn't just underestimate my resources. You underestimated my intelligence. Tyler's mouth opened, but no words came. I continued, my voice even. The painting you walked past dozens of times in my living room, the one you assumed was a poster. It's an authenticated Keith Haring valued at $2.5 million. A reporter dropped his pen. The judge looked directly at Tyler. Mr. Morgan, do you understand the gravity of what you attempted to do? He muttered something, but the words died in his throat. Kate stepped closer to the bench. Your Honor, this is why we countersued for elder financial abuse. Mr. Morgan targeted what he believed was a vulnerable older man. Instead, he targeted someone who spent decades navigating high-level art negotiations. The judge nodded slowly. Her voice was stern but calm. Mr. Morgan, the evidence against you is overwhelming. Your behavior shows a clear intent to exploit Mr. Lawson. Tyler stood abruptly, rage overtaking shock. You played me. You let me think you were poor. You... The judge cut him off. Sit. Down. When he didn't move, two bailiffs stepped forward. Tyler collapsed back into his seat. The judge turned back to me. Mr. Lawson, thank you for clarifying. I nodded respectfully and returned to my seat. Emily reached out, squeezing my hand. Her eyes glistened with pride and relief. By the time the hearing ended, the courtroom was buzzing like a hive. Reporters were already drafting headlines. I saw a journalist from the San Francisco Chronicle rushing out the door with her phone to her ear. That evening, the article appeared online. Mystery collector J.S. revealed as San Francisco retiree, foils elaborate financial exploitation scheme. It spread fast, art forums exploded, museum curators emailed, old acquaintances called. People I hadn't spoken to in decades wanted interviews, features, invitations to exhibitions. My quiet life was gone in a single afternoon, and strangely, I didn't mind. Because maybe transparency had become my greatest protection. Rob arrived with beer, laughing. Ed, you're trending ahead of a Giants game. It's hilarious. Emily read comments aloud, shaking her head in disbelief. They're calling you a genius. They're calling Tyler the most incompetent con artist in San Francisco history. And here's the thing, I didn't celebrate Tyler's downfall, but I didn't regret it either. He chose greed. He chose deceit. He chose to prey on someone he assumed was weak. He wasn't punished for choosing a target. He was punished for choosing the wrong one. The following week, Kate called me with the final piece. Tyler accepted a plea deal, 18 months in federal prison for tax fraud. The DA will pursue the elder abuse charges separately, but he won't escape those either. And Vanessa, I asked, bankrupt, cooperative. Her license is gone. She's out of the game. I exhaled slowly. It's over then? It's over. Kate confirmed. You won. But as I watched Emily sketch quietly in the next room, her shoulders relaxed. Her face peaceful for the first time in months, I realized something important. I hadn't won for me. I'd won for her, for the daughter who had trusted me at 7 years old when she danced on my shoes, for the young woman who slipped a trembling note into my pocket on her wedding day, for the person who still believed I could protect her when the world became too dark. Tomorrow, letters from Tyler and Vanessa sat waiting to be opened, but not tonight. Tonight, peace finally filled the house, and for the first time in a long time, I let it stay. 3 weeks passed before I finally opened the letters sitting on my desk. They stayed there through mornings of coffee, evenings of fog rolling over the Richmond rooftops, and quiet nights when Emily and I found ourselves laughing again, tentative, but real. But a story isn't truly finished until every thread is tied, and those 2 envelopes were still threads. It was a quiet Saturday when Emily placed a steaming mug beside me and sat down. Dad, she said gently, you don't have to open them, but if it's keeping you from moving on, maybe it's time. She was right. I opened Tyler's letter first. His handwriting was neat, almost painfully careful. Federal prison will do that time becomes a thing you shape around regret. Mr. Lawson, I never thought I'd end up here. 18 months feels like a lifetime when you're locked inside your own mistakes. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to acknowledge what I did to your daughter. She didn't deserve what I planned. Neither did you. You were right about everything. I hope Emily finds someone who treats her the way she deserves. I wasn't that man. There was no manipulation left in him, just consequences. I opened Vanessa's letter next. Mr. Lawson, I've lost everything, my license, my job, my savings, my reputation, but I still wake up free. I know I don't deserve even that. Thank you for stopping us before we did something we could never undo. I don't expect anything from you. I only wanted to say that you had every right to destroy me further, and you didn't. Emily exhaled, leaning back in her chair. Are you going to respond? She asked, with voice soft. Yes, I said. Why? Because responding is not forgiving. I answered, it's releasing. So I wrote 2 letters to Tyler. Your apology is acknowledged. Use this time to become someone different. The door to my life and Emily's is closed, but your life isn't over. Choose better when you step out. To Vanessa, your apology is acknowledged. Rebuild your life honestly. Stay away from my family. I don't wish continued suffering on you. Let consequence be enough. Emily read both replies, and her eyes softened. You're kinder than most people. Dad. No, I said quietly. I'm simply done carrying them with me. 2 weeks later, the charity exhibition opened at the De Young Museum, the first public display of my collection in decades. Not the whole collection, but carefully curated pieces, the herring, the early Banksy, 2 Basquiats, and a selection from my rare stamps, each protected under glass. The title of the exhibition, Wisdom and Worth Protecting America's Seniors. The curators didn't need to say whose story had inspired it. The city already knew. The gala crowd shimmered with art patrons, philanthropists, museum directors, collectors, and a surprising number of ordinary people who'd been touched by stories of elder financial abuse. When I walked in with Emily on my arm, a quiet murmur went through the room. Not fame, but recognition, respect. People approached with gratitude, curiosity, admiration. Some thanked me for speaking up. Others shared their own stories of manipulation, of aging parents targeted, of children who intervened too late. Emily held my hand the whole time. During the program, a speaker took the stage to share an anonymized case study, mine, thinly veiled, a con man, a planned institutionalization, a daughter unknowingly being used as a weapon, and a father who refused to be prey. People in the audience exchanged glances. Everyone knew exactly whose story it was. Emily leaned toward me. How does it feel, being known? I looked around the room at the art, the people, the light catching the frames. Strange, I admitted, but right, hiding didn't protect us. Truth did. A museum board member approached then, accompanied by a young curator. Emily straightened when she saw him, Ethan Brooks. They'd been spending time together recently, though she pretended it was strictly professional. The way he smiled at her told another story. He shook my hand. Mr. Lawson, your collection is extraordinary. The provenance on the Banksy alone could anchor a full exhibition. Call me Ed. I said. Ethan glanced at Emily, then back at me. You raised an incredible daughter. Emily flushed. I pretended not to notice. Later, as the evening wound down, Emily and I stood before the herring piece from my living room wall. She touched the frame lightly. I walked past this every time I visited. She whispered, I had no idea. That was the point. And now, I said, it protects others. She leaned her head on my shoulder. You turned something ugly into something good. I had resources. I said, most people don't. That's why this matters. At home, after the exhibition, I returned to my study. A new acquisition awaited cataloging, a penny black from 1840 I'd won at auction for $300,000. I examined it under my magnifying glass, the delicate ink strokes crisp despite its age. For months, this room had been a battlefield of strategy. Tonight, it felt like a sanctuary again. I closed the album gently. Life didn't return to what it was before because life never does, but it settled into something honest, something safe, something peaceful. Tyler Morgan sat in prison learning the lessons life had delayed for him. Vanessa Morgan rebuilt from ashes of her own making. Neither of them would ever touch our lives again. And in the next room was the only treasure that mattered, my daughter. Safe, wiser, healed. That was the victory. The rest was just art. The weeks following the exhibition passed gently, the way a storm finally settles after tearing through a coastline. Life didn't return to normal because normal was gone, but it found a rhythm again, a quieter, richer rhythm. Every morning, Emily and I shared coffee in the kitchen the same way we used to before Tyler entered our lives. She laughed more freely, slept without fear, and carried herself with a strength she hadn't realized she possessed. One evening, she came into my study holding 2 envelopes. Dad, she said softly, these came for you. One was from Tyler's correctional facility. the other from Vanessa's new address in the East Bay. I stared at them for a moment, then shook my head with a small smile. I already closed that chapter. I know, she said, but closure works both ways. I had responded to both of them weeks ago, polite, concise, unburdened, neither hateful, neither forgiving. I had nothing left to say. I placed the new letters in a drawer without opening them. Some endings don't need to be read to be complete. As summer approached, invitations began pouring in. The Met wanted to feature part of my collection for a winter show. The Getty wanted 2 Basquiats on loan. A dozen collectors wanted meetings. I turned most of them down. My life had been defined by art for decades, but now, in this unexpected second act, I found myself more interested in people than paintings. One afternoon, I walked through Golden Gate Park with Rob. The breeze carried the scent of eucalyptus and the distant laughter of children. Rob's steps were slower these days, but his mind was as sharp as ever. "So," he said, adjusting his glasses, "you're JS in public now. How does it feel being the city's most famous mystery solved loud?" I replied, "but freeing." "You did good, Ed. Not just for Emily, for every older person who's been targeted but didn't have your resources." I nodded. "I'm thinking of turning the fund into a permanent foundation, legal support, education, grants for seniors who've been financially exploited." Rob smiled. "Now that's a legacy." We passed by the DeYoung Museum. Through the glass, I spotted Ethan Brooks giving a tour to a group of interns. His posture was confident, but his attention kept drifting toward the courtyard toward Emily, who was sitting on a bench sketching. Young love in its first quiet bloom. "She's healing," Rob said softly. "She is." I agreed. "And she's choosing carefully this time. Maybe you should too." I raised an eyebrow. "Choose what a life outside this study of yours," he teased. "You've spent years hiding. Maybe it's time to live." I chuckled. One step at a time. That evening, Emily found me cataloging a new piece, a small, textured study by Basquiat I had acquired decades earlier but never displayed. She watched quietly for a moment before speaking. "Dad, do you ever regret living modestly? Keeping everything secret?" I looked at the painting, then at her. "No," I said, "because it kept you safe, and because it made moments like this, your strength, your clarity, even more meaningful." She smiled, a warm, grounded smile. "I'm not afraid anymore. I know, and I'm not ashamed of what happened. Tyler didn't break me. He revealed me." I stood, cupping her cheek gently. "You walked through fire and didn't burn," I said. "That's something no amount of money can buy." She hugged me tightly, and for the first time since her wedding day, I felt the full weight of the storm lift from her shoulders. The next morning, I returned to my study before sunrise. The window glowed pale blue as the city woke outside. I opened my stamp album and examined the penny black under soft light, its details still mesmerizing after nearly 2 centuries. This little square had outlasted empires, wars, generations, not because it was powerful, but because it was crafted with intention. I closed the album slowly. Longevity, I realized, has very little to do with strength. It has everything to do with purpose. I thought of Tyler, sitting in a federal facility, finally facing consequences he had evaded all his life. I thought of Vanessa, rebuilding from the rubble of her own making. I thought of Emily, rising from betrayal into clarity, from hurt into wisdom. And I thought of myself, a father who had lived in silence for so long he'd forgotten that silence can be a weapon and a gift. Some stories end with revenge. Ours ended with something better: justice, accountability, and peace. True revenge wasn't destroying them. True revenge was ensuring they could never harm another soul again. True revenge was giving Emily her life back. That evening, Emily called from the living room. "Dad, come look at the sunset." I walked out and stood beside her on the balcony. The sky burned orange and gold, the kind of beauty that made silence feel like a blessing. She slipped her arm through mine. "Everything turned out okay," she said. I smiled. Everything turned out exactly as it needed to, and as the last light dipped behind the hills, a gentle truth settled over me. A father's love, quiet but unwavering, is the strongest fortress in the world, and for Emily, That fortress would stand as long as she needed it, forever, if she asked.